Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled The Divided Nation of Yisra'el, Part 3 Why the Path to Unity Starts with Division. The podcast objectives are restate why Yahuwah is in the business of division, reveal how lawlessness brings about spiritual death, analyze what it means to be the right side of division, and reveal how Yahuwah is achieving unity during the Great Divide. Welcome. Now, before we begin today's lesson, I would like to welcome all my beloved brothers and sisters in Yahushua Messiah who have been scattered to the four corners of the earth, who Yahuwah has joined to this ministry for such a time as this. I would also like to welcome anyone who is engaging our podcasts or videos for the first time. We trust you were led by the set apart spirit in finding us. And if you continue to be led, we hope you stay with us. For these are troubling times, and an evil day is just ahead. To this end, if you are watching this video on YouTube and you have not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button below, and you will be alerted whenever we post new videos. Also, if you have any questions at the conclusion of this video, you can ask them using the link in the podcast description below the video player. Last but not least, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up so YouTube can share it with believers like us. The business of division. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome back to our Word from a Watchman series. In our most recent podcast, in this series, we analyze the great danger of being spiritually yoked with false believers, to wit, the assembly of the unrighteous. Now, upon the conclusion of that podcast, at least one thing should have been clear vis-a-vis this deadly alliance is one of the greatest threats to your election. And the only reason why the majority in this nation can't see it is because they are operating in the 80 degrees of lawlessness, all of which drain you of your spiritual strength, and all of which make you spiritually blind. Not only this, but I remind you of the infectious nature of lawlessness with the following inflection point. Lawlessness is like wildfire. It can spread faster than any physical disease. Above all else, this is why we have been commanded to stay away from the assembly of the unrighteous, for it is a super spreader community where false believers gather in synagogues of Satan and infect each other with lawlessness beyond spiritual recovery. And this, my friends, is why Yahuwah is in the business of division. It is so we, the chosen elect, are not infected with the spiritual diseases and viruses that are destroying the transgressors and Jacob. As I said before, Yahuwah is dividing our nation to save a remnant and to fulfill a promise. Now, this should make it clear that the division Yahuwah is orchestrating is not arbitrary. To wit, Yahuwah is not randomly handpicking men and women that he wants to save while excluding others without a cause. Trust me, Satan wants you to believe that because it brings the judgment of Elohim into question. Not only this, but it discredits the messengers of Elohim by insinuating that we are promoting division to the detriment of this nation. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say the division we preach is a direct result of the proliferation of lawlessness within the extended nation of Yisra'el, which has resulted in a majority of spiritual tares and a very small minority of spiritual wheat. Here lies the problem. Vis-a-vis, spiritual tares are toxic and they have the power to contaminate everything and everyone within their vicinity. Ergo, if the tares are not separated from the wheat will surely die. It is inevitable. My dear friends, I have proven this throughout this exposition on lawlessness explicitly in our recent lessons on ignorance. Therefore, I will, in short order, analyze how the 2 degrees of ignorance we have analyzed thus far have the power to bring about your spiritual death. And then we will begin analyzing how Yahuwah is dividing this nation to separate those doing lawlessness from the chosen elect. Let's get started. The plans he has for you and me. Now, commencing with disregard, i.e., the fundamental degree of ignorance, it should be clear how this spiritual virus has the power to bring about your spiritual death. Consider this, my friends, and be advised. If you are in an assembly where the people resist the command to call out sin and refuse to stand for truth and righteousness, you will, in the sure course of time, begin operating in the same spirit of disregard. We know this because unity cuts both ways. To wit, Satan also desires unity in his kingdom. For look, listen, it has been written, every kingdom divided against itself is laid waste. And if Satan casts out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then does his kingdom stand? And thus we conclude Satan will not allow anyone who has been girded with truth to persist within his assembly. Why? It's because noncompliance also cuts both ways. Ergo, the same way an assembly of righteousness will spew out everyone who persistently disregards the will of Elohim, the assembly of the unrighteous will spew out everyone who persistently follows it. Now, the key word in this analysis is persistently, for we are defined by behavior patterns and trends. Ergo, if you persistently go against the norms of any society, you will eventually run for the door, or eventually they will run you through the door. Now, this brings us to error. Along these lines, if you are in an assembly where the people operate in error, being led astray by doctrines of devils and heresies, in the sure course of time, you too will be led astray by doctrines of devils and heresies. Notwithstanding, error, unlike disregard, has the power to achieve the inverse scenario, which speaks volumes, for this is a feat that most of the degrees of lawlessness cannot do. And as it is so deadly and profound, I will offer it to you as a revelation. Get this: error has the power to contaminate an environment where the spiritual wheat are in the majority. To wit, error has the power to divide and destroy an entire assembly of righteousness. Now, whether or not he succeeds depends on many factors. And yet, the fact that he has a path to victory should tell you how formidable he is and why I warned you of the danger of even a fraction of error in the most recent podcast. Not only this, but we are only considering two of the 80 degrees of lawlessness. My dear friends, there are 78 degrees we didn't touch on, and they are all flourishing in the assembly of the unrighteous, and they all have unique powers to kill. And so, for the last time, I'm telling you, this is the reason why Yahuwah is in the business of division. It is because he knows the plans he has for me, and he knows the plans he has for you. Plans of peace and not of evil, plans for a future and a joyful end. And thus, he must divide us from everyone who would compromise our destiny. But know this: whoever you've lost along the way, they will be replaced by true family and true friends. For although the former were destined to leave you, the latter were destined to stay. The right side of division. In taking a closer look at the division Yahuwah is orchestrating, we should first look at what Yahushua Messiah has to say on this matter. Matthew 10:34 through 36 is revealing, "Do not think that I have come to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to bring division, a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a man's enemies are those of his own household." Now, there are many things the Ruach is leading me to say concerning the avowal of Yahushua Messiah. And the first of these is a warning, which I will offer as an inflection point. As the division our nation is enduring has multiple sides, you must be led by the set apart spirit to ensure you are not being deceived into endorsing the division being pushed by the enemy. My dear friends, this is a crucial matter which increases the unlimited value of the set apart spirit. And thus, I ask you to hear me carefully as I say, many are operating in the spirit of division while believing they are doing the work of Elohim. Now, the primary reason why many will fall into this delusion is because they are not wearing the girdle of truth. And yet, it is possible for you to be on the wrong side of division, even if you have been girded with truth. And we analyze this in the most recent podcast. Therefore, seeing as the girdle of truth is not a catch all, the question of the hour is quite simply, how do you know that you are on the right side of division? That is to ask, how do you know the division in your life is being orchestrated by the set apart spirit and not the wicked one? The answer is sure, and I will offer it to you as a treasure box. The enemy uses division to foster deception, enmity, and diversity of belief. On the other hand, the set apart spirit uses division to foster knowledge, wisdom, unity, and alignment in our beliefs. Now, it may be hard for some to see how the Ruach of Elohim is using division to foster unity. And trust me, I get it. As I have said aforetime, this quest is filled with many paradoxes and ironies. Notwithstanding, we can uncover each one if we are led by the set apart spirit and committed to making good decisions. If we are, then we will solve this great mystery. We, my friends, will ensure that we are on the right side of division. Unity and the Great Divide. Now, in beginning to ensure that we are at all times on the right side of division, we should further consider what Yahushua Messiah has to say on this matter. And as I am stepping outside of the traditional Bible, I ask you to be led by the Ruach of Elohim in your interpretation. In the books of the Nazarene, the 13th chapter, the 18th verse, Yahushua Messiah is declaring, "You may think in your hearts that I come to bring peace to the earth and concord among men. And this is true, for such will be under the rule of Elohim. However, before this comes about, those who oppose it must be defeated. Therefore, I come to arm those who are loyal to the cause to put a sword into the hands of men. Henceforth, families will be divided against themselves, and brother will be separated from brother, and father set against son." Now, the latter part of this passage agrees with the good news of Yahushua Messiah recorded in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. To wit, Yahushua, like Yahuwah, is in the business of division, which is why I refer to him as the great divider. On the other hand, the former part is not recorded in the Bible, and yet I encourage you to receive it as truth, for it reveals why Yahuwah has divided our nation in times past and in times present. It is for the following reason. Get this. The majority within our nation have always been in opposition to unity for the simple but sure fact that they are unwilling to submit themselves to the desire of Elohim. And so, what does Yahuwah do? Well, I'll tell you, he sends prophets, shepherds, watchmen, and other ministers to warn his people of the consequences of their lawlessness and their sins, and to call them to repentance. And so, how have the majority of his people responded? Here again, I'll tell you, they killed his prophets. They turned against his shepherds. They abused the watchmen and chased them from their post. And they mistreated the remainder of his ministry. My dear friends, this is merely a high-level accounting of the degenerate behavior of the spiritual miscreants within the dying nation of Yisra'el, past and present. Let me tell you something. Their crimes are worse than you could ever imagine. And so, don't imagine. On the rather, hear me carefully as I say, Yahuwah's vision was never to unify the entire nation, for this nation is filled with rebels and transgressors who oppose the rule of Elohim. And where there is opposition to the rule of Elohim, there can be no unity. Now, let me tell you something. Yahushua Messiah is very clear that he did come to bring peace to the earth and concord among men. But he is also quite clear that peace and unity are being reserved for those who submit themselves to the rule of Elohim. My dear friends, remember your end times training. To wit, there will be 1,000 years of peace on earth and goodwill towards men at the end of these last days. And the reason why we will have peace and unity and goodwill in those days is because everyone left will be under the rule of Elohim. And this, my friends, is why Yahuwah is authoring division. This is why his messengers are currently removing all the stumbling blocks and those doing lawlessness from the earth. And trust me, they are on track. And by the time they are finished, everyone who opposes the rule of Elohim will be gone, and they won't be back. Now, that speaks to the end game. The more pressing matter is, how do we, the renewed nation of Yisra'el, achieve unity during a spiritual season of division? That is to ask, how do we foster peace with all the noise and chaos associated with the Great Divide? That, my friends, is the question, and we will begin to answer it next Friday as we continue analyzing the divided nation of Yisra'el. Until then, I encourage you to stay strong and believe Yahuwah has the power to handle the complexities of division to ensure his people are unified. And so, set your heart to endure these matters and this season, for our nation is still going through the time of a great divide. Now, here is the final word. The greatest vision you will ever see is the plan he has for you and me. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, one of the greatest things about the Most High Elohim is his penchant for fairness and the fact that he will repay. It may take a while, but believe me, payday is coming after a while and for all. The question of the hour then is, how do you want to be paid? If your answer is everlasting life, you should by now be in the habit of making good decisions. And when it comes to unity and lawlessness, make the choice to be on the right side of division. Trust me, being on the wrong side is like crime. It doesn't pay. And thus, I make my petition to you, O Most High, for all this people to pray. Will Satan works to do his best to hinder us while on this quest? We ask you, help us pass this test. Make us one. Make us one. We know the plans you have for us, and as we are willing to carry much, our prayer is simple, and as such, make us one, make us one. Help us to stand for what is right, to do your will with all our might, incite your people to unite. Make us one, make us one. Hallelujah. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on today's lesson. And if you have any questions, please submit them using the form at pinnacleofholiness.com. And I will respond to you as soon as I can. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, The Divided Nation of Yisra'el, Part 3. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 506, The Spiritual Disease of Ignorance, Part 6. I will post this podcast on Monday, September 15th, 2025. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim. Continue to watch. Continue to pray. Continue in fasting. And most of all, continue to be focused. For the end is coming. The end is near.